This is the River Weaver at Northwich in Cheshire. Quite the idyllic spot. It's accessed from the canals either via the Anderton boat lift when it's working, or along the Manchester Ship Canal from Ellesmere Port. And here, just where the river splits off to create an island, you find the Northwich Dry Dock Company. There's a lot of history on this site, as evidenced by this lovely old slipway gear mechanism. There are also a lot of free-range chickens, which, it turns out, can run surprisingly fast. Go, Usain, go! But we're not here for the chickens, but this, a wet dock, in which a very special narrowboat is being cared for. This is Saturn, the last of the canal flyboats.
A flyboat is a very important vessel. She's a bit like your white van man of today. It ran to a timetable, and the flyboats used to stop at all the warehouses on the side of the canal. And the warehouses were quite interesting because there's several still around, and they had a signal on them. And they used to put the signal out if they wanted the flyboat to stop. And they loaded them with small bits of cargo, so it might have been tea, sugar, a lot of valuable products like milk, cheese and things like that. But they might have taken people's furniture as well. So it was very much the courier of the day.
Saturn was built in Chester in 1906 and was owned by the Shropshire Union Railway and Canal Carrying Company. They had a huge fleet with wide boats, narrowboats, tugs and flyboats. Whereas traditional narrowboats would be fully laden with a single bulk cargo like grain, coal or wood, flyboats were more like a parcels service for smaller shipments and often perishable goods which needed faster transport to market. Bear in mind, engines were newfangled things back then, so horses were used to pull the boats along.
It was certainly a fast walking pace. And they would have changed horses there are stables along the canal. They would have changed the horses quite regularly, but they always had the same horses. So they have a horse from Ellesmere Port, probably to Beeston or somewhere like that, change the horse, and then when they were returning, they'd use the same horses again. They lived on while they were working, so they were probably out for about 6 days. 4 men on the boat, two asleep, 2 working, and then when they came to a flight, they'd all come out. And then on the long stretches on the Shropshire, they had tugs as well.
Built with oak sides and elm bottom, Saturn would have carried between 12 and 16 tons of cargo overall and was horse-drawn right up to the 1950s. Now it's gone into dock, so a team of heritage-loving volunteers can give the old girl some well-deserved rest and TLC.
She's in here for a few months actually. We're doing general annual painting that we would normally do, and so sanding, and we're lifting up the shuts, so we're doing some maintenance on the bottom boards, just the general stuff that you need to do to keep a wooden boat going really. A lot of it I think is preventative and beating it before it gets bad.
The initial restoration, we completely took her apart, and there isn't a bit of wood on her that it's all new wood, or was new wood in 2002. Now it's a question of just keeping on top of the maintenance. So we dock her every year and just do as much maintenance as we can. And I mean, as a charity, we obviously are shaking our cans to get money all the time, but because it's quite an expensive thing to keep her going. And now she's quite an old boat, because narrowboats were only built to last 25 years. So most of the boats around now are way past their sell-by date.
Admittedly then, this is a so-called ship of Theseus, or in a more modern context, Trigger's broom, one where little or nothing of the original actually remains. But what's really being preserved here is the spirit of the boat, And some bits from the start are still hanging in there.
All the ironwork is original, and we were very careful when we actually took her apart to actually get the actual shape absolutely as she was built, and we used the same techniques as well. It was quite an effort to do it because you've seen how fine she is in terms of build. All the planks at the front, they're all steamed, all the shearing is steamed just to get the shape. So it's definitely a very skilled job to actually build a boat like that. If you look at the old photographs and the photos of her now, she is very much as she was built.
Whatever your opinion on the boat's originality, it is nonetheless still a valuable heritage asset with a unique role in education.
She's important because she's the only one left. She was in a very sorry state when we found her. We managed to get funding to do the restoration, and now we think it's important to actually use her as a floating museum, really, because what we do, we take her to locations, and then we'll have the children from the schools. They come and sit in the cabin. We tell them how the guys lived, about the cargoes they carried, where the boats went. So a very important thing to actually explain to the children and the public generally what the history of the canal is about. And there aren't many boats that actually travel around and work as a museum.
Speaking of travelling around, you may have spotted Saturn recently, along with plenty of other historic narrowboats, in the video I made about a parade from Chester to Ellesmere. I've left a link to that one in the video description. The group preserving this boat is, unsurprisingly, called the Saturn Project, and they're all unpaid enthusiasts who, of course, would always be glad of more help.
Anyone is welcome to come and volunteer with us, whether you want to do a bit of maintenance or you want to do a bit of boating. You don't have to have your own boat, but it's nice you've got a bit of background, but we can teach people the skills. There's no sort of set training programme, but if you just came out boating with us, then we'd show you the ropes, essentially, excuse the pun. We're towed behind other boats, so generally there'll be a group of people, a group of volunteers, might not know each other, you might know each other, and then just boating around the system. A lot of it, you have to use ropes differently. There's a lot of tips and sort of techniques that you need for boating with a butty boat. For example, if you're coming up to a flight of locks, the motorboat you're being towed with has obviously got reverse. Saturn has no reverse, so you'd want to come in quite steady, usually jump off with one of the ropes, check it around the post, slow her down that way. So just little things that you wouldn't really think about is very different when you're boating with Saturn.
If you'd like to help the team or read more about Saturn's history and rebuild, I've left links to the project's website in the video description. Thanks for watching. Cheerio.